She was lying face down, but could see that there was a bluish-white iridescent glow illuminating the room. She turned over, and what she saw hovering above her sent her heart racing faster than it ever had before. Welcome to The Night Visitors, where we share purportedly true accounts of interactions with vampires and other supernatural predators. I'm James, a paranormal researcher and lifelong vampire enthusiast, coming to you from Transylvania. The following is a true story with names and identifying details changed to protect the privacy of those involved. Tonight's story comes from Cambodia and involves a supernatural entity called an ap in the Khmer language. This word is often translated to English as witch, but it's more than that. It's a combination of a witch, ghost, and vampire. According to folklore, the ap is always a woman who is a failed witch. Her powers are not strong enough, and the malevolent spirits that surround her curse her to become a vampire. Her condition compels her to leave her home at night in spectral form to feed on the blood of neighbors. One curious aspect of the ap's condition is that when hunting victims, she appears as a disembodied head floating in mid-air with a spinal cord and entrails trailing behind. This peculiar penchant for bodily separation is something the ap shares in common with other vampires of the region, such as the Penanggalan of Malaysia, the Karsu of Thailand, and the Manananggal of the Philippines. The only way the ap can rid herself of this vampiric curse is to pass it on to another woman who also practices witchcraft. And only then will she be free to leave this world and reincarnate. In western Massachusetts, where I grew up, there is a large Khmer community, and a high school classmate of mine shared the following account with me that happened to her aunt in Cambodia in the early 90s. Chanda was living with her husband in Siem Reap in northern Cambodia in October of 1992. This was a good time for the Khmer people. Relative peace had returned, and the monarchy was about to be restored after 2 decades of a brutal dictatorship, followed by fighting between opposing factions. Things were not so great for Chanda on a personal level. She was in her 40s and living with her husband Vanak, to whom she had been married for over 20 years, during most of which he went from one extramarital affair to another and developed a drinking problem. He was a pathetic man in a lot of ways, but Chanda loved him anyways, and recently he had begun to behave better, mend his life, and be faithful to her, so she was happy about that and hoped it would last. What she was not happy about was that the woman with whom he had had an affair for the past several years lived right next door to them and made no secret about her ongoing interest in Vanak. Her name was Amara, and she was a tall, skinny, middle-aged woman whose youthful beauty had begun to fade. Chanda pitied her because she had always relied on her looks to get by, but never cultivated a strong personality, work ethic, or bothered to educate herself. Amara would stand by her front door and wait for Chanda to return from the vegetable market or the temple, and her greeting was always the same. "How's your husband? When will he come see me?" Amara would ask in her scratchy voice. It was never, "How are you? How is your daughter doing with her studies in Phnom Penh?" Or even a perfunctory comment about the weather. Chanda would respond, "He's fine, but not interested," and wave her away with a dismissive gesture. The neighborhood gossips claimed that Amara practiced witchcraft. It really wasn't idle gossip, but more a solid fact, as she often appeared making offerings to spirits beside her front door that were darker and more sinister than the common offerings of food made to one's ancestors or to the monks at the temple. And Chanda was always finding charms and trinkets left by her bedroom window that she knew were left by Amara in an attempt to regain Vanak's affection. Her magic didn't work, and she was growing old, alone, and frustrated. Chanda felt bad for her, but not enough to be friends. One day, Chanda opened her front door to throw out a bucket of water she had used to mop her floors and found Amara standing there with her arms crossed. Their eyes met and they held each other in a penetrating stare. Amara smiled and said, "Things are going to change soon. A lot has gone down in the past few days." And she threw her head back and let out a deranged cackle. With all the restraint she could muster, Chanda ignored Amara's comment and tossed the bucket of dirty water to the side of the door instead of on Amara's head as she really wanted to do. Chanda did not believe that Amara had any real power, but from the moment she made her pronouncement, an odd heaviness settled over the house, and Chanda and Vanak felt uneasy, as if they were being watched, and misfortune and unexpected calamities could rain down at any moment. Also, disturbing images began to haunt their dreams. Vanak would dream of a giant snake constricting him, and in the morning he would awake drained of all energy and remain sluggish throughout the day. Chanda would lay in bed half awake, feeling invisible hands touching her body and what she could only describe as pinpricks stabbing at her neck, wrist, and ankles. And in the morning she would awake to find small puncture wounds in the very places she had felt the stabbing sensations. This troubled her greatly because it was not unheard of for venomous snakes to enter people's homes and attack by night. But if that had been the case, she wouldn't have woken up in the morning. But still, the experience left her unsettled. Just like Vanak, Chanda found herself drained of all energy to the point where completing even the smallest of household tasks was a challenge. The family doctor could not find anything wrong, and he told her to eat well and take vitamins. Chanda did not think of herself as superstitious, but she was a devout Buddhist, and like many Khmer people, she venerated and sought the help of her ancestors and believed in the power that the spirit world held for both good and evil. The thought that the nightly attacks that she and Vanak were experiencing could be of malevolent supernatural origin had begun to creep into her mind, and she decided to consult a monk at the local temple. The monk was a kind and gentle man of advanced age. He sat across from her on the temple floor in front of a large golden Buddha, with his legs crossed, wearing the saffron robes traditional of Cambodian monks. He smiled and nodded as Chanda told him everything she and Vanak had been experiencing. When Chanda had finished, the monk chanted a prayer over her in Pali, the sacred liturgical language of Theravada Buddhism. When he finished, he spoke to her saying, "Of course there are things not of this world that can cause harm, but we mustn't always think that whenever we face difficulties, it's because of curses or evil spirits. But I'm going to give you this, and as you wear it, the source of your misfortune will be revealed to you, and when you know more, come back to me." He took a thin piece of string and tied it around her wrist before giving her a final blessing. They bowed to each other, and Chanda left the temple. After receiving the monk's blessing, she felt better than she had in days. Her energy seemed to return, and a feeling of peace came over her. As she got closer to home, she saw Amara was standing by her front door, visibly disturbed. She stood there for a moment, glaring at Chanda, before stomping her foot and making an audible huff and retreating back into her house, slamming the door. Everything seemed to get better at home. She and Vanak did not fight, and they slept more peacefully without any nightmares. They woke refreshed, with their minds clear and ready for the day. 3 days after her visit to the temple, Chanda felt that things were finally back to normal, and even better than before all the unpleasantness had begun. She remembered what the monk had said about the source of their misfortune being revealed, but up until that point, she had not received any signs. Over the course of one night, all that would change. That night, Chanda drifted off peacefully to sleep, to awake again shortly after midnight, hearing a strange whooshing sound above the bed. She was lying face down, but could see that there was a bluish-white, iridescent glow illuminating the room. She turned over, and what she saw hovering above her sent her heart racing faster than it ever had before. Smiling down at her was Amara's disembodied head with bloody guts trailing behind it, and the unmistakable smell of rotting meat filled the room. Amara's head grinned at her fiendishly, revealing 2 sharp incisors. Chanda spit at the ghastly apparition, and it vanished into a puff of smoke. Vanak slept beside her peacefully, unaware. Chanda immediately rose and ran to her home altar and began lighting candles and incense and invoking the help of the Buddha and her ancestors. It was clear that she had not been attacked this time, as she did not feel drained or ill in any way. Just as the monk had said, the string that he had given her allowed her to see Amara for what she truly was, whereas before she had remained invisible when carrying out her nightly attacks. As soon as the sun came up, she rushed to the temple to talk to the monk and found him after morning prayers. He smiled and motioned for her to join him in the temple courtyard. She told him what she had witnessed only hours before, and he nodded understandingly. "I knew this is what it was, but when this creature is revealed, it weakens itself. The App exist. They're not mere legends, but there are always ways to combat them. Pchum Ben begins in 2 days. Come to the temple and make your offerings to the monks as you always do, and at your home altar honor your ancestors and ask them to chase away all evil from you. You will see how quickly the App flees and never bothers you again. The power of good is so much greater than that of evil. It may not look that way when you look at how the world is, but it is the truth." Chanda pressed her palms together in the traditional Khmer gesture of respect and bowed to the monk. She walked home and spat on Amara's doorstep as she passed her house. Pchum Ben is a celebration unique to Cambodia, but it shares a lot in common with the Chinese Hungry Ghost Festival. It occurs on the new moon during the 10th month of the Khmer calendar, which usually falls in late September or early October. It is a time when the gates of the underworld open and the spirits of the dead return to earth and can benefit to a greater degree from the offerings made by family members and loved ones. It is a time to make food offerings directly to the dead and also to Buddhist monks, and it is believed that offerings made to monks during Pchum Ben create a transfer of merit that helps one's ancestors going back 7 generations. Chanda always observed the customs and traditions surrounding this important festival, but this year she had a good reason to go heavy on the offerings. When she arrived at home, she told her husband everything that had been revealed to her and what the monk had suggested. He wholeheartedly agreed to make special offerings during Pchum Ben. Chanda also remembered another tidbit of information regarding the app, which was that they could not pass through bushes or trees with thorns. Just as an extra precaution, she brought in some thorn branches from outside and placed them around the bed where she and Vanak slept. Amara did not make an appearance over the next 2 nights leading up to Pchum Ben, although Chanda did see her at a local shop and she appeared to have scratch marks on her legs and arms that could have been caused by brushing up against thorn branches. That could have been a coincidence, but then again, it may not have been. On the first day of Pchum Ben, Chanda and Vanak went to the temple and saw the same monk that Chanda had consulted. They made a donation to the temple of money as well as food. And the monk recited a prayer for protection and blessing on them and their home. At home, they presented a variety of food offerings on their living room altar and invoked the help of their ancestors in defeating once and for all the vampire witch that lived next door. Their offerings must have worked because later that night around 3 o'clock in the morning, they woke to loud piercing screams coming from none other than Amara herself. That night, she was not in spectral form, but she stood right at their front door screaming, stomping her feet and scratching at the door. She carried on with these hysterics for 10 minutes or so until the lights of surrounding houses began to turn on and neighbors looked out windows and opened their doors to take in the spectacle. Finally, she shrieked, "You spoiled it! You ruined everything forever!" And then she ran off into the night and was never seen again. To this day, Chanda has no idea what happened to Amara. Some neighbors told her that she left Cambodia and emigrated to Long Beach, California, where her sister lived. But her abrupt departure in the middle of the night and the fact that she never returned home to collect her things was beyond strange. As odd as it sounds, Chanda was happy to have experienced these encounters with her vampire neighbor, because defeating this nocturnal predator as a family brought her and Vanak closer together, and for this she would always be grateful to that floating head and pile of slimy guts that had appeared over her bed. I hope you have enjoyed tonight's episode. If you happen to be viewing this on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. And if you would like to share your personal encounter with the undead, contact me at thenightvisitorsvrs@gmail.com or share here in the comment section. A special thanks to composer Tim Kulig for our intro music, Haunted House. If you would like to support this project, please consider buying me a coffee at ko-fi.com/thenightvisitors.